Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Amplifier Podcast. Today, I'm super excited. We're going to be talking about how to get stuff done in your business. One of the biggest plagues in Western society today is business productivity, personal productivity, business productivity, getting results. And almost everything that we are taught in school and in life is counterintuitive to actually what gets results, what creates productivity. And so today we're going to be talking with a specialist on my team, Mallory Murphy. And Mallory is a specialist in action instincts. She is a team performance specialist. She is a professional behavior designer. And Mallory is going to be walking us through a new program that she has developed called Amplified Performance. And it is the root of how to help entrepreneurial companies and teams become more productive, become more successful, and to feel more successful as a team. Mallory, welcome to the Amplifier Podcast.
Thanks so much, Don. I'm really excited to be here.
So tell me about your journey, your role as a performance specialist. Like, what does all that mean for the audience? I mean, I know all about it because we've worked on this for a long time, but share with our audience what a team performance specialist is.
So team performance specialist, individual performance specialist, both of them are my specialty, my passion, and you would call them my unique action skills. So when we're talking about team performance, like you said, we talk about the plagues of productivity. And one of the biggest challenges is too many people trying to do too many things and not getting results. And as a business, you entrepreneurs, you need those results. You want to grow, you want to go faster, but when your team's not matching that speed, they're getting caught in the weeds and you're just, oh, we got to hire somebody else to do all this extra work because everybody's burdened out. Hey, there's another option. And let's explore that to make your team be better, perform better, and be happier too at work, which gives you better results all around as a company.
Sounds pretty straightforward to me. Why is it so hard?
It's so hard
because you know nobody has figured out this formula for how do you make your team move faster, feel better, create better results, or at least I should say they haven't figured out an easier way to do this. It seems like it's white knuckling. It seems like it's a grind.
It is. And like we've worked with teams that are just so focused on, I have to get this day-to-day thing done. And it's urgent, it's responsive, it's not looking at the big picture. So when we have entrepreneurs who have these big visions of where we're going and they start to share these with their teams, you do start to see a lot more buy-in. Okay, but how do we get there? Well, you get there about 90 days at a time, but how do we as individuals on that team support that vision, support those 90 days by what we're doing? Because a lot of those tasks that we do during the day, they're busy work. Like, let's be honest, you think about your day and you think about all the things you got to get done. You write down that entire to-do list. If you're like me, you love lists. And I can guarantee you 80% of that list is just busy work. It's still important. It still needs to get done, but it's not driving the results. So how do we take a step back, look at that entire list that I'm going to make you write out all those to-dos that you've got for a week, 2 weeks, a month. Let's think about all those things and let's simplify it down. Where do you need to be spending your time? What other options are there for those tasks that still need to get accomplished, but are they the best use of your time? Are we getting the most value out of you?
Sounds like, to me, I'm a big believer in the Pareto principle that 20% of what you do creates 80% of your results, and 80% of what you do does nothing. It's as you put it, it's busy work in the 4 Disciplines of Execution book, and a couple of others. The authors call it, the whirlwind of,
Yes.
And you were talking about urgent and important. Covey talked about that in his matrix around what's important, what's urgent, and often what is a real productivity and a real results killer is urgent and unimportant work. Meaning people get so caught up in the whirlwind that they can't even recognize that the stuff that they're working on should just be eliminated. as opposed to, they're trying to be more efficient at what should not be done. Peter Drucker, yeah, one of the big management gurus, said that, the idea of efficiency and effectiveness, and so many people in this sort of whirlwind get caught up in efficiency. And I've got these sort of really sensitive ears when I hear someone talking about, you got to be efficient. I heard it this past week when I was on free days, and we were at Disney, and the idea was, I heard it a few different times. Well, we got to be efficient with what we're doing. Like, no, we do not.
Oh, let's not do that.
We do not need to be efficient with what we need to do when having fun. We need to be effective at having fun. And
it's
we
a
need
myth. It's an
it is a
absolute
myth.
right? This whole industry, Western culture, entrepreneurs, it's those buzzwords that it's a myth that we need to be more efficient. No, we don't. We need to take a step back, and we need to be more effective at what we're actually doing. And there's been, I've watched lots of different YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, but there's lots of different motivational things out there that talk about how you can be better. Well, they don't simplify it down in a way that gives you immediately actionable results. And so when we're talking about our amplified team performance, our performance workshops, that's what it's all about. If you look at all of the naming that we've intentionally created around our products and how we do things, it's all action based, because so many times, and I know you've been a cult to this as well, we subscribe to workshops or people that are going to come in and help our organizations. We spend all this money, and it's great for that week. It's great for those 2 days where you have your team. And then what happens? Nobody's there to hold us accountable, and it gets lost. It was great for those couple days where we were reminded and we were influenced, but there was no actionable insights that happened continuously afterwards. So we lose that momentum. It was a waste of an investment in the long term. Maybe you've got a person or two that were able to really get what they needed out of it, but your team is not performing at the level they want to be, or that you want them to be, because they went through this workshop and they reverted back. And we've worked with teams that we've been succumbed to it ourselves, where we've been through those. You and I both have. And we took all of those ideas and those feelings and the principles, because being able to perform better is part of that feeling. I'm going to perform better if I'm happier, if I'm feeling fulfilled, if I'm appreciated, if I'm doing the things I want to be doing. So how do we cultivate all of that into removing procrastination, improving performance, being more effective, enhancing communication, and getting rid of some of this busy work that doesn't need to bog up your schedule? How often do you have people at your top level of your company that, well, I got to do this? Why are you even doing that task? That's a waste of your time. If we're paying you $100 an hour, why are you doing a $20 an hour task, right? So we take all of this information, all of those tasks, and we simmer it down to where our teams are involved in what's happening. We ask the questions, they walk away with something actionable, and the leaders get a report afterwards saying, here's what your team is saying. Because a lot of times when we have the leaders in the room, sometimes, and I'm guilty of it, when you're in the room, sometimes I'm just gonna wait and see what you have to say. What's your opinion, Dawn? That's just human behavior to default to the leader of the group. So I like to make sure the leader of the group's not necessarily in the room. So this team has freedom to talk about the issues that are there and what they really want to do. And we come out of there with solutions, cost savings. Hello, let's talk about cost savings when we do this. We both know that we have been able to, we've taken our hiring plan and we thought, okay, well, we need to hire 5 people in the next quarter. We hired 1 person very intentionally and very specifically after this performance workshop, and everybody's performing better.
Now, there's so much baked into what you just said. I don't even know where to start, but I'll start with a couple of thoughts. And I'm going to try to keep it to 3 so I don't dominate, because I want to extract all of your experience and expertise and not get on my normal soapbox. But one of my favorite books from the beginning of my career is Stephen Covey's the 7 habits of highly effective people. It's
Not
not called
efficient.
it's not called the 7 reactions of highly efficient people, right? It's effectiveness, and these are habits. And so there's a whole bunch of neuroscience baked into that sentence that, has been, at the time when Covey wrote that book, not all of that neuroscience was proven, but it has been proven now. You Covey, you're talking about workshops, and people go to a workshop and they treat it like an event. And you know, we, if you people see on our screens after our names, we've got this number, and the first number is our propensity for looking for information and facts, right? And so we recognize that about ourselves. But underneath that, Covey said, one of his quotes was, "To learn and not to do is really not to learn," which means if you're learning and not applying, you're wasting your time. Stop spending money on workshops for people to learn and not to apply it. And then
Absolutely.
what's even worse, and this comes down to, talking about people taking action with processes, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. The other part of Covey's statement was, to know and not to do is really not to know at all. And I've
Just let
had,
that sink in for a moment. Like,
yeah,
really?
just think about that, because it is such a powerful thing if you kind of just think about its simplicity, but its profoundness, because it applies to why go to a workshop if you are not committed to applying what you learned as soon as you leave. And, and inside of a business, I hear this all the time when I'm trying to coach or trying to hold someone on my team accountable for what they did not do. They always say, "I know, I know, I know." I'm not questioning your knowledge. I am questioning your actions. Your actions is what I need you to do to create. Like, there is a place for knowledge, right? They are
Absolutely.
called academics. They get tenure in universities, and they don't create any results, right? If you want to know stuff and not apply it, go be a professor. And that's not discounting the academics, because the academics that we have learned some of these things from spent decades researching and testing to understand, how do we get stuff done as human beings. And almost everything that we are or have been taught in our families, in our previous work history, in even in school, has nothing to do with getting stuff done. It has to do with a whole other sort of underlying issue, that when you leave school and you enter the real world of business, you're not paid for what you know, you're paid for what you get done. And there
Absolutely.
are there are really, really, really smart people in a lot of companies who get nothing done. So so tell me about amplified performance, and how is it different from a traditional program, a traditional workshop?
Well, I want you to start to think about these workshops that you've attended. Like you said, they're events. Usually they're going to be in big conference rooms, a lot of people, 50 to 100, depending on what the topic is. And it's a generalized concept, and you're hoping as a facilitator that your message is going to hit somebody and they're going to be able to take something away from it, right? We can agree to that it's pretty generalized. It's an event. Here's my concept, here's how it's going to help you, and you're responsible for taking what you need out of it, right? You've been there. So
Mm-hmm.
how we make amplified performance workshops different is, I don't want to call it a workshop, I want to call it an experience, because I've talked with the teams that we've done this, and weeks later they're like, "That was so good. Like, I took what you said and we did this and we did this." And that energy is still there. It's an experience, because I don't want to take more than, I will take 10 people maximum. So you've got these big workshops that are 50, 100 people. You're not reaching that whole group. You're not providing that impact. I want small groups where I can provide the biggest impact to these people. So it's very individualized. I spend the time gathering all this information, this data, this research, and I give our clients, our team members, a small bit of homework so they can show up prepared in the right mindset for what to do. The biggest challenge that we have sometimes is they see this as busy work. Well, I got to get this done. It's okay. It's really simple. What do you do in a day? What do you have to get done in a week? And it can be, well, I've got to do an expense report, or it can be as big as I've got to complete this quarterly milestone and this huge audacious goal. Like, it's got to get done, and here's everything that has to happen. And when you talk to people and they're like, well, I'm just so busy, I can't do it. Okay, take a step back. What are you busy doing? Let's write it all out. That's what I ask our people to come prepared for. 8 to 10 people, you walk into this room. I don't like 8 a.m. starts. My brain is not even awake at 8 a.m. I won't even take a meeting until 10 a.m. because I need that time to just wake up, get my head in the game, and focus. So I like starting our experiences a little bit later in the morning to give everybody else that option. Like, let's at least have 2 cups of coffee, people. Like, I know how y'all work. So you get in the room. What happens now? Well, you've got your team there. And sometimes I know the people, sometimes I have a great relationship with them, and sometimes I don't. But what I do know is their cognitive instincts, which is Colby, which you mentioned. We call them your action instincts. So as I mentioned earlier, everything is action based. And when you hear that word, you think movement, you think momentum, you think results, and that's the right mindset to be in when you are in this room. So we're going to take this, we're going to talk about communication. That tends to be, and we experience it, Dawn, on our teams, the biggest challenge is communication. You can boil a whole lot of those people issues right down to communication. So let's dive in right then and there as to what is it about communication that makes things difficult between team members, and how are you using your action instincts differently, and why is that causing that friction, and why is Dawn driving me crazy? Well, guess what? It's because our action instincts are very different. Doesn't mean that one is better or one is wrong or anything like that. We just have very different action instincts that are strengths. So how do we leverage that within a team and understanding one another and sharing that with the group? So it's not just, here's your question, here's your information, move on to the next thing. No. This is an experience. We're going to talk it out. This isn't confrontation. This is a safe place. Everybody gets a voice. This is not a discussion. This is, hey, what are the issues? Let's figure out where our problems lie. And a lot of those times we can narrow it down to not using our unique action skills, not utilizing our action instincts. And like you mentioned, process, we're not action sequencing things in a way that everybody understands. It's tribal knowledge. That process, that action instincts, as we like to call it, is, well, this person does it this way and this person does it this way. And there's a 10-page document somewhere as to how to do it properly, but nobody's going to follow that because why would we do that? It's a quick thing to do, right? So we take all of those challenges and we sit down, and within, it's less than 8 hours. Usually it's like a 10 to 4:30 at the most. The bigger the group, the little bit longer, and we still have discussions. You walk out of there knowing how you're communicating poorly, how you can improve your own communication, how you are procrastinating and what you need to do to fix it, how you can be more productive by using your action instincts. And then the best part, my favorite part, is everybody's writing on Post-it notes. I get to take a step back, and you guys are up out of your chairs and you're putting Post-it notes on the walls everywhere. And it gives you this great visual of what people actually like to do. Now, I'm not going to dive into it too much because I know we've got something else brewing behind the scenes that we're really excited to roll out a little bit later. But when you walk away from that exercise, let me tell you, it is the most powerful thing that I have ever experienced my performance teams doing. And they take it away with this freedom, this lightness, that I can do that. Yes, we want you to do the things that make you happy. We want you to do the things that you're really, really good at. those things that you don't like doing, those things that end up at the bottom of your to-do list. And believe me, Don, I've seen the bottom of your to-do list because it created my job description when you and I started working together. So that's
Yeah.
how powerful this is, right? It helps the business grow. It helps it 10x, it 200 to 500 times the productivity. Like, think about that. If you just did that with one team, what would that look like? What have you experienced on it? We did ours a few months ago with all of our teams. What have you experienced since then in the change of people?
Well, I think for, to everyone is at a different degree of adoption, and they always say that people need to hit, a lot, across your team, as leaders, you need to make sure your people hear it 7 times, sometimes 77 times before they hear it the first time.
Yep.
Now, I don't deal with the people who need to hear it 77 times because they get liberated to go use their skill somewhere else. Because I think that they are useful. Everyone, I think, wants to contribute, but if they can't get on board the bus in hearing something 7 times, they're I don't have the patience for that, at least for not people who work directly with me. But for those who really get some value by taking the action, you can see this weight lifted off of them, and their engagement and their focus and their happiness that I can be me and do what I do great and not have to get my inner brain all caught up in self-doubt around the 80% of the things that are on my job description that I hate, that I suck at. I mean, the point that you made earlier, that we went into the quarter and across the team, they had a plan or a perceived need to hire 5 people, and we hired 1 as a result of going through this, I think is really powerful. And correct me if I'm wrong, but 5 to 1 is about 500%. And so that's just a real life illustration. And now the powerfulness of this, I think our society, and it started off when we were probably in about grade 2, when we were measured on, did we learn everything? Did we memorize everything? I'm left-handed, and I remember I've always been a bit contrarian and challenging authority, and it's a really weird, what's the word I'm looking for? Not dilemma, but I sort of look at this 2 ways, because I also came up with this strong military structure, hierarchy, discipline approach. I was in Army cadets for most of my, and Cub Scouts right through to Army cadets from age 5 till about age 19. And so I really like structure, but I'm terrible at creating structure. Right. And so, and the number on my screen explains that, right? And we'll get into the action instincts in a minute, but it really comes down to understanding different parts of the mind. I want structure. That's affect. That's this emotional part of your mind. But my instinct for creating it is, that's good enough. and that's not necessarily effective. And so I'm not the person who is responsible for creating systems and structures, but I am the person who is responsible for creating the freedom for people to do that.
What does the stress feel like? I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Don, because you just said something that was, I think, will resonate with so many people.
Sure.
You feel the need for something, and you thrive when it is there, but you're
Correct.
not the person to turn around and create it.
Correct.
When you are forced to wear that shoe on the wrong foot, or write with your right hand rather than your left hand, because you said you're a lefty, how does that make you feel when you make yourself feel, or an organization or the situation has made you feel that you have to go against your grain, against the way that you want to behave and have to do things? You're capable of it.
Yeah,
we know you can do it.
100%. I can do it. I mean, I can create. I mean, I've got a situation, and I was in a series of entrepreneurial workshops last week, and kind of leveraging this idea of action, right? And really embracing, walking what I talk. It is at the end of each day in that workshop. It was a 2-day workshop, and everyone has experienced this. You've gone to a workshop It was, wow, I had aha moments. I learned so much, and they do nothing with it.
Yes.
And because of this focus on, I need to act on insight. Before I left the room, I sat down and I summarized everything, that all the ahas I got out of it. And I did two really important things with that knowledge and those aha moments. The first thing I did is I shared everything I learned that day with everyone in the company. I
Yep.
posted it on our internal boards and said, here's everything that I learned today, and wow. The second thing I did is I sent you some messages saying, schedule this action meeting and this action meeting. It wasn't 50 things, it was two things, two
Yep.
big things that I wanted to act on right now. Because the most important thing around insight is to take the first step. Once you take the first step, then you can build momentum. But one of those actions that I came out of was, you said the word, but there's a whole bunch of emotional words that come down to, I want something, I can do it, but I won't do it. And there's this stress and strain that's there that I would describe as frustrating. I would say if you don't have a good handle on that feeling, it can turn into anger and even rage if you're really sort of don't have a high enough level of developed emotional intelligence. But it's certainly frustrating, and it can lead to anger and rage in some leaders. Um,
Well, even
you
in your
know,
teammates, like when you think about, you have a high performer and they're
mhm.
really, really good and they're getting results in this one very specific area, but they become compliant. Like they just all of a
Yeah,
sudden
yeah,
they're no longer good team members. And you're sitting there in a review going, well, what the heck happened? Like we hired you for a reason. You were doing so good. Why all of a sudden, and sometimes it's not all of a sudden, sometimes it's a progression, but why have we lost those results? We've lost that productivity, and all of a sudden you are a negative ripple effect within this company
yeah. I
rather
mean,
than this positive thing. How do we turn it around?
you know how I feel about compliance, right? It is a big red flag for me that if we are working to be compliant with some bureaucratic system and not creating value in it, it needs to be destroyed. It needs to be eliminated. It needs to be transformed into something valuable. Um, but the word that I would best describe that tension and friction between a want for something and not having the right instinct for it, even though, and this is where a lot of leaders go to, right? You have this want for something, you don't necessarily have the mental energy to instinctively do it, but you can do it. They get sucked into a vortex of working on all kinds of things that they hate and they suck at because they have the capability to do it. And I would describe that, in its experience, as it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
And I would say it leads to some version of insanity, like the whole idea of you do something over and over again and expect a different result. That's called insanity, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think those are some strong words, and hopefully it can resonate with people who are listening. But ultimately, I think it leads to leader burnout. It leads to team member burnout if you are constantly having to work on things that you're capable of, but that you're not wired to do it. Like, and emotionally you don't want to do it, but you feel this compulsion that you have to do it because
So
other people aren't doing it for you.
exactly.
It drives you crazy.
It drives you crazy. It's insanity. And we have seen over the last little while this phenomenon called silent quitting. Well, if
100%.
you look and you love psychoanalyzing all of this stuff, so I'll let you dive into all that. But if you just look at the surface and you think to yourself, we've all been there. We've all been in situations where we just want to give up. Like, this is not serving me at all. Like, this is not energizing me. Sure, it's a paycheck, but I mean, I could go get that paycheck somewhere else. You have team members silently quitting or actually
Mhm.
quitting when they're good people. And that's costing your business. That's costing your business hugely. Money, results, like performance, all over. It can cost you clients. So how do you, at this top level of the business, whether it's the entrepreneur or your COO or the leadership team or whatever name you want to call yourselves, when you are the leaders within that company, how do you support your team members so you don't have this silent quitting phenomenon happen? Well, you talk to them. You create an experience in which they are heard, in which they get to say, I'm really good at these things. I love to do these things. I want to do these things. Can I do these things and find a way not to do all these other things? Because all this bulk, this like huge chunk of 80% of my day, right? We go back to pair two principle, but 80% of my day is the stuff that's just weighing me down. It's causing me to silently quit. But that 20% that I really enjoy doing, that's giving me those results, is the reason I'm sticking around. So, how do we make that all better? How do we make our people feel better? That's an affective thing. And let's be honest, we live in a world where if I don't feel happy and I'm not feeling good, I'm going to just go somewhere else. Somewhere else, the grass might be greener. I'm in like this world, you can change jobs 6 different times, and it's not the same world that my parents grew up in where you stayed with one company for forever, right? We have options. But Don, you've got great people. You have great people. How do we
I think
retain them?
I think almost every company has a vast majority of great people, right? I truly believe
hiring bad people just because you
I
want to hire bad people.
I truly believe that the vast majority, I don't know if it's 80% or 90%, but I love the number 80%. I think it proves out across life to be so true. I think the vast majority of people that you hire have a want and a capability to be high performing, successful team members. And are they top performers? Statistically, through lots of different studies, only about 10% of any group are going to be in that top 5% who create a lot. But the goal isn't to make everyone a top 5% player. The goal is to take 80% of your people and get them into the top 20%. If you can do that, and there's a lot of regular studies on this. Gardner Research does it, Kinsey does it, but you were talking about this idea of silent quitting. They have both found consistently, and the number moves a digit from year to year, and it depends on what's going on in the world. But generally speaking, it's 80 to 85% of the workforce in the Western world is disengaged with their work. Now, does that mean they're going to leave? No, not necessarily, but that might be even worse, right? If they stay and do nothing. And so what's the leader's job? The leader's job is not to force people to do grind. The leader's job is not to force people to just do stuff, regardless of if you like it, if you are good at it. The leader's job is to spot the talents of your people. Most people, there's things out there like, there's the high potential sort of processes of how do I spot my high potentials? Well, the high potentials are that top 5%. And, what are you going to do with high potentials? Get the hell out of their way. Let them do their job, right? Make things fast and easy for them, because they will be the sprinters who make records. And with top, those high performing top performers, get the hell out of their way.
Yeah.
But that's not how you build your business.
No.
Right? That's one simple step. But the second step is, how do I take the vast majority of my team and take them from being disengaged C players and make them into B players, and some of those people eventually become A players. As leaders, we spend the vast majority of our time, our own time, focusing on D level and F level activities. And we spend the vast majority of our time focused on D and F level players. Look, the bottom 10% of your organization, if you spend 80% of your time fixing them, all you're going to do is lower the bar for everybody else.
Absolutely.
But if you can recognize the talent in your team and look at them from an engagement standpoint, from an effectiveness standpoint, and figure out how do I help them, free them up by recognizing their talents and give them simple, easy ways to apply that more effectively. You can 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x the performance of your business.
Yeah, I want to talk about an example that we had just of this.
Mhm.
So we went through and we did a operations team, and there were some field technicians in this team, industrial business. And we had everybody sit down, we had everybody go through what they're really good at, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, all of those feelings, and what are they really great at? And what are they see the most results from those tasks? And having that conversation as a group. Hey, you do this task and yeah, you're really good at it. Why don't you do more of it? Right? So that tends to come up when we have these conversations is, yeah, you're doing all this tasks, but like if I had to describe Dawn, you would be this one person that I'm going to go to for this thing. It's not going to be a whole bunch of this. I'm not going to Dawn because I need finance reports. I'm going to Dawn because I need help with creating an innovative idea, right? I'm that's what I'm going to go to Dawn for. I'm not asking you for a report. Don't even go to you for an Excel spreadsheet. But I know there are people in your organization that love that are great at that can do that quickly. So I'm going to go to those people. But when we're sitting together in a room, we had this operations team. And we had one gentleman sitting in this room. We're going to call him Bob because I don't want to name his real name. And Bob's sitting there, and Bob's a field technician. And he's an amazing field technician. He's out in the field all the time. And his manager recognizes his potential to be more than that field technician. And he's like, yeah, I would like to do something more. He's got a young family. He's ready for that next step in that journey, but he's really good at being a field technician. Well, when we did this exercise with Bob and we found out what his unique action skills were, we also identified that as an organization, they needed to hire somebody else in a whole different role to take on all these things that nobody else wanted to do, where this huge gap was that was this busy work, but was so crucial for the business to move forward, right? They needed this quality stuff handled, but they didn't really, the person that was taking care of it was at max capacity. They couldn't take on more. The next typical step, I don't want to say logical, I want to say typical step in business is, okay, well, here's our job description. We're going to hire for this person. We go through this exercise and Bob raises his hand and goes, yeah, I'm really good at field stuff. And yeah, I enjoy it. But if I was to pick this or those things over there that you've just identified that you want to hire somebody for, I'd really like to learn more and step into that role. We can hire another field technician. I can train somebody that is interested in becoming that A player field technician. And I want to teach more. I want to show more, but long-term career growth, I want that role. And nobody had even thought that this was a possibility. All of a sudden, we know this organization no longer needs to hire a person. They have somebody who didn't even realize that this opportunity was open to them. They have the skills. They want to do it. Now they're moving into that. This organization no longer has to hire a six-figure job for somebody else, and they're able to actually bring somebody else up through their organization. So completely saving money, and somebody else is really happy because their job increased. One of the other great things that has come from one of these is you often have challenges between your sales department and your operations department. And your ops is the guys in your field, and your sales is the guy getting those jobs. And there tends to be some tension. And this organization had that tension and they couldn't figure out why. Well, I'm telling the sales team this, and I'm telling operations this, and you're all trying to get to the same result. We're all on the same page. We're just not driving on the same road anymore. How do we get on the same road? And I did this exercise with both groups separately. So they weren't together in the same room, but they both were bringing up the same issues with the same people and the same problems. And we talked about their action instincts, how they're instinctively going to take action, how they need to be communicated with in order to receive information. Don, when I'm talking with you, I know it's got to be bullet point. It's got to be quick. If you want more details, you're going to give it to me. You know that when you're telling me, I need some details. Give me a little bit more. Send me a link. Let me do the research myself, but I need more details. So when you have two people You think you're giving me enough information because that's all you need, and I'm giving you too much information because that's the communication I need. There becomes this huge disconnect. There becomes this frustration that over time builds resentment, over time builds to a problem that never needed to be there. So when you take that step back and you go, okay, I have a sales team that needs more information, that needs more details, and I have a field team or an operations team that's coordinating these jobs that just needs you to say yes or no, and here's the bullet points. When you understand communication that way, you understand your action instincts, all of a sudden, there's no longer this chasm between the two. The productivity between that sales team and that operations team was incredible. The two people that were on, one of them was on the sales team, one was on the operations team. They'd been bickering at it for months, and it was driving everybody crazy. They sat down together in the same room and went, well, I don't really have a problem with you. This is my problem. And they both were like, okay, well, here's my commitment. Here's your commitment. Great. We now understand how to talk to each other differently based on understanding how they want to communicate. We went through all of that in the first hour of our workshop. The results we see and feel in that organization immediately afterwards and continues on.
It's amazing, and I want to dive into action instincts in a moment, but there's two things that when you were talking about action skills. We are taught from an early age that we need to get better at the things we suck at. And there's a reason.
I should be better at math.
Look, I mean, and depending on what world you're in, you may have your own biases, and we're not going to go into everything that there's another whole podcast around how we actually make decisions. And I really want to dive into that more, because how we actually make decisions is totally different than what we all think. Okay.
Yes.
But
that's for another day.
That's for another day. And that'll be another episode, folks. The thing that you said there's two really important points. You were talking, throughout this conversation, we've been talking about busy work, right? And for any one person listening, you have a definition of what busy work is for you or busy work is for your team. But busy work may, in some cases, be essential work. And I'll use me as an example, and the example you gave with this field technician who saw this whole set of things that other people hated to do, but they needed it done. The normal way of approaching that is I better hire one more person just like everyone else and give them that workload. And that's the complete opposite of what everyone should do inside of a team or as an individual. So for me as an individual, when I first learned this process and started to apply it, I looked at all the things I do with my time as the leader of the business. And we categorized it into that unique action skills and excellent action skills, competent or capable things, and incompetent things. And the trap we all get into with the I have to do it, it's I should do it. We had one of our leaders was, when we were going through this exercise with one of our leadership team, he had about 10 activities that in his mind, he should do them. And he hated them. And they were, for months, he was saying to me, I'm caught up in the whirlwind. I'm down in the weeds. And he was describing it like everyone else was pulling him into these activities. And when we actually baked it out, he was injecting himself into all of these activities. And as we went through that exercise, we just eliminated 15 hours of his week of things that he wasn't good at. They were time sucks. He was down in the weeds attending forecast meetings and sales meetings and all sorts of things that were not his unique action skills.
And you have a team saying, why are you in this meeting? I can do this.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying it to people in the areas of my responsibility. I don't even know why you're here. We did it, as a matter of fact, Mallory, we did it at the beginning of this podcast where we had someone else on our team show up and wondering if they should be here. And I was like, well, what are you going to contribute to this hour? And they said, well, nothing. I just thought I needed to be here. I should be here. And we said, no, you don't need to be here. We got this. We'll have this conversation and we'll hand you the recording so you and your team can edit it and publish it and share it with the world. Their contribution to this effort was not to have the conversation. It was to take the recording and turn it into something. And so they didn't need to be here for that purpose.
Exactly. Saved them an
But,
hour.
it saved them an hour. They'll go focus on something that they could make a bigger contribution in. For me, when I went through that, and I think this is what's really important for everyone who's listening. If you find yourself in all kinds of busy work, your word for that activity, don't, and you hear yourself saying, I should do this. Folks, let me give you a really quick tip. Stop shooting on yourself.
I give you permission to stop.
Stop shooting on yourself. If you describe something as I should be doing it and not I get to do this, then you are doing things you should not be doing. Stop. And so there's two great examples of this, right? Mallory, we're having this conversation because 6 years ago almost,
On 7.
Is it 7 now? See,
Almost 7.
time flies when you're having fun. I learned about all the things I was doing because I should be doing them or because I was capable of doing them. And I categorized all that. And I literally took the bottom half of all of those activities and I turned it into this new person that I needed to go find. And that person was you.
Yeah.
That person was you. And the difference, and this is really important, folks who are listening, for me, this was busy work. For me, this was a grind. For me, it led to all of those activities being big productivity sucks, big procrastinations. And I wanted these things done, whether it was logistics and planning or my schedule or documentation and paperwork, all kinds of things that, as a business person, I should do them. And I hated them and I sucked at them. And as a result, I procrastinated on them. My job as a leader is to be productive and to be effective and to lead the organization to higher levels of effectiveness. And so we created this new count-on ability chart, as I call it, that was this list of things that I hated doing, that I would describe as busy work, that I would describe as, oh, this is a grind for me, but I wanted them done. And for you, all of those activities are not busy work. They are not should to do. For you, you get to do these things. You enjoy this planning. And I think that's the biggest aha that people need to get, is that all of the things that you're shooting on yourself about that feel like a grind are someone else's. I would love to be able to do that. And that's what happened with that field technician in that meeting when he saw this whole list of activities that other people were like, oh, we gotta get someone to do it. Like it was painful, sacrificial work. Like someone's got to do that, but I can't imagine anyone wanting to do that. And right in that room, someone who was capable of being an effective field technician saw an opportunity to make a bigger contribution and for their team, for the business, and for their life, in getting to do something that is inspiring and energetic for them. And it was a complete transformation of where they could go with their life. And imagine if you're given the opportunity to go, I don't have to do the job I'm doing. I get to do this other thing that would just enter. How much more productive would a person be if they get to do the things that really excite them and energize them? And that's what unique action skills is all about, is taking that top 20% of what you're really good at, what you're really energized about, what would just let you go to work every day and not feel like work at all. And if you could do that with, I mean, can you do it 100% for everyone on your team? No. What you're trying to do is to make progress, not perfection, moving closer and closer to that 80%, where 80% of their time is focused on these 20% of things that they are just incredible at, that they love doing. And that act alone will just double, triple, quadruple, or more the productivity and results of your team. And proof's in the pudding, right? Proof's in the pudding, because when we went through this exercise with some of our teams recently, instead of having to hire 5 people, by shifting around people's countdown abilities and really getting them to hone in on more of what they love to do, what they're great at, we went from having to hire 5 people to hiring 1, and we just eliminated all kinds of waste and busy work that people were shooting themselves into every day.
Yeah. And I want to talk about, just briefly here, as a leader, your job is to support your people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't support them and help them grow, especially in these entrepreneurial businesses. We're talking to entrepreneurs. Hopefully you're listening and you're either in an entrepreneurial business or you are an entrepreneur. This is for you, that you want your people to grow and you want them to share that mindset that you have. And I know we talked about this before the podcast, Don, about how as an entrepreneur, nobody's going to be at your level, but it's your job to help get them to see that vision and that mindset of being an entrepreneur versus your typical bureaucratic organization and corporation. There's a place for those. It's not on this podcast. So as a leader, your responsibility to your company, to your baby, your organization, to these people is to see their potential. Mm-hmm. How can you not see their potential if you're not asking them? Now, mm-hmm. As a leader, we got a lot of employees in this company. And Don, as an entrepreneur, you don't and you shouldn't be sitting down with each person and saying, where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? That's also not an effective conversation. It's not an efficient conversation, but it's not effective, because I don't know. If I had someone higher up than me sit me down and go, well, where do you want to be? I'm going to sit there and freeze and go, well, what are my options? What are you going to tell me my options are within this organization?
100%.
Right?
And I mean, there's a whole bunch baked into that, Mallory. I mean, first off, if you ask someone, what do you want to do? I mean, I've heard, I want your job. Well, okay. And I would love for someone to take over and run the business so I could work on the next part of the vision. But, it's not really a useful conversation.
No.
Because you got to start off where you are.
Yeah. And that's
where you've got to create a path for people to recognize what's possible. I mean, people have lots of people on your teams have all sorts of grand ideas. One day I want to be I remember in my life, one day I want to be the general manager. One day I want to be a division manager. One day I want to be.
You want these titles. You want this.
Well,
salary.
yeah, they want titles or their perception of what it is.
Yeah. But
do they understand what that role requires, and is that really what you want to be doing? And
exactly.
But sometimes that comes from the same root problem that we're talking about, is that there's hierarchy and status and authority, not accountability and love and understanding of what are the actions that role does that makes it really effective. I mean, as a business leader, the idea of manager or leader, your job is to do nothing. Your job is to spend, all your time building a strong team.
Yeah.
And if you do not get energized with spending time with people, coaching them, giving them a vision, helping them spot where their thinking or their gaps are, if you don't want to be a coach, you shouldn't be a leader. It's just that simple. You shouldn't be.
There's a whole lot in there, Don, that I think there's a lot other podcast on.
There's an awful lot baked into it.
But we'll
have another whole podcast talking about the coaching mindset and what LMA is really all about. LMA, meaning leadership management, creates accountability.
Exactly. So where I wanted to go with that comment about leaders needing to understand and allow for that, I want to talk about you and I for a second. Some listeners might not know, but I started with Don here almost 7 years ago, going on 7 years, as he described, doing 50% of the work that he didn't want to do. And I read the job description and I went, I love doing these things. So I applied. Here I am starting at this business 6, 7 years ago. That's not to say what I was hired for, I am still doing today. So
Yeah, great point.
this is not something that is stagnant. The things that we have freed you up to do have developed into a whole bunch of other things that you don't want to do. There's one thing out of that 10 that you did like to do, and you didn't realize 10 more things were to come. So it's continuously growing. And this is where something you have to be checking in with your teams regularly. I think sometimes quarterly is a little bit too frequent, but at least biannually, you need to do this experience with your teams. Find out, especially as an entrepreneurial business, stuff changes and stuff changes fast. Your job description changes because you need to do different things to grow the business. We're not in an industry as an entrepreneur where things are going to stay the same. They're going to be monotonous. We're the government and this is how it is and this is how it'll always be. No, we're breaking that mold. So what I started doing for you 6, 7 years ago, there's aspects of that I'm still doing today. I love event planning. I love this learning and coaching and mentorship and facilitation, but those weren't on my job description 6 years ago.
No, they were not. No, I mean, I think what's really powerful about, and there's a bunch of deep insight in there around this idea of unique action skills, because when I've done this with people who were not ready for letting go, right, from particularly leaders. If leaders are not ready to let go, they shouldn't be a leader. They should be maybe mentored in some leadership roles, because I had a leader once who was talking about all of their hands-on skills of being a great technician, and they couldn't see an elevated role that involved that. They thought that they had to do it. And I went, well, what's an elevated version of being a great technician? And their mindset couldn't get there. So, well, how about building great technicians? How about helping create 10 more great technicians based on your knowledge and experience by teaching and coaching as opposed to doing? And that's really the definition of how you elevate to your next level of unique action skills. Is you don't have to be afraid to let go of things that used to be what you love to do, as long as you are distilling it down to a new higher level of what that is. I mean, I went through it, over the course of the last 7 years, and it is 7 years, by the way. I think it's 7 years, maybe this spring or summer.
November.
And it started off that I had 56 things that I was doing every day, and it turned out, and this is really important, I think, in terms of the leadership that's required to take your team there. You need to do it for yourself first.
Yes.
When I really mapped that out, and when the exercises that we go through in this workshop, when I mapped all that out and looked at what I was really great at and what I was really effective at and what I really loved doing, there was this smaller list of the 56. And then I looked at the value of all the things I was doing, and those were the most highest value things I could do for the company and for the team. Meaning, if I did more of that stuff, I could create more value in the growth of our organization and in the success for our clients and building up, being a better leader. I was spending 5% of my time doing that stuff. 5%. And so the very first thing that leaders need to do is do this for yourself.
Yeah.
And through that, you'll recognize how valuable it is for you, and then work to apply it on your direct reports and their direct reports, and gradually make it just part of the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why people don't do it. There's, like I said, people shit on themselves. When it's your team and you're asking them, if you ask them, in an ineffective way by not walking them through the process that you follow, they're waiting to be told. They're waiting to be told what the new opportunity is, what the new role is, what's
options?
The job description. What are my options? Your options are unlimited if we can help discover how you can make a unique contribution.
Yeah.
But you've got to. I think one of the problems there, outside of this program gives the process to help you do that. But equally, if you simply ask, like, what is it you want to do? You know, you got to understand that when, depending on the person and the kind of culture you have in your organization, if you don't have a really transparent psychological safety sort of relationship with that person, they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what, like, that's the boss. If I say I want to do this and not that, they might say I don't have a job tomorrow. And
And that's a great point.
right.
Absolutely. We've been talking a lot about teams and the amplify team performance. But one of the other things that I love doing and that we do here at Amplifier is individual performance.
Mhm.
Specifically for those, I mean, we can do it for anybody on the team, but the highest value of that individual performance is going to be getting an entrepreneur in the right mindset as to how do I even understand this? Where does it come from? How, and providing not just the experience, but some coaching around it. Their second in command, integrator, COO, general manager, whatever title you want to give them, but your right hand girl or guy that is taking care of business for you so that you can be the entrepreneur that you need to be, who's taking care of the day-to-day stuff. The
Yeah,
third person
sorry, go ahead.
that the third person that needs to be on board, it is crucial for your business to succeed, is your entrepreneurial partner. And you and I mean, you can call it executive assistant, you can call it your go-to, your Girl Friday, whatever you want to call it. But that entrepreneurial partnership is that person that connects that entrepreneur, that vision to that day to day. And when you have all three of those people very aligned at that top of that count on ability chart, it makes taking things down to each level seamless.
Yeah, I think there's something powerful in there, Mallory, and I think it's a mindset shift that lots of leaders have to make, because there are old traditional social norms
Yeah.
that I think are completely wrong in terms of effectiveness of teamwork. And I'm just going to segue into a sidebar something. We're talking about entrepreneurs, but what we're really talking about is an entrepreneurial attitude. And so if you work in a company that is very bureaucratic or very corporate or very rigid, that doesn't mean that you as a leader cannot be entrepreneurial in how you apply it to your team. As a matter of fact, I think in with a lot of our energy clients in our other business, there I think there's a lot of value in individual leaders deciding to have an entrepreneurial attitude and an entrepreneurial approach to how they develop the effectiveness of their team using these same principles.
Yeah.
I think it's powerful. But back to this traditional mindset, right? And it goes back to the 40s and 50s, right, where you had and it also goes back to what people might think about hierarchy. And I go back to my military sort of training and just the structure of cadets that I was in. And I went from being a private all the way up to being a captain through a bunch of years. But what most people don't understand about hierarchy, even in the military, is the military, you might have a second in command. When I was a captain, I had 3 platoons. Each platoon had a lieutenant. And those lieutenants were the second, were in business terms, my direct reports. But I also had drill sergeants and I also had quartermasters that also worked for me and did not work for those lieutenants. They supported those lieutenants and they supported me. And so inside of the business world, you've got this 1950s era mindset of, I think the 2000s word is executive assistant. The 1970s version is secretary. You are none of those things. Okay. You are none of those things. And people need to change their mindset. I have a second in command who runs the business. He's in EOS terms, he's my integrator, he's my general manager, and everyone else in the company reports and works for him with different departments. And I would consider him my right hand. and you are my left hand who manages me.
I like that because you're left-handed. I feel like that's got a fun power
Yeah,
balance.
for me, it's just as if not more powerful and more valuable because you manage me, understanding me, and your job is to help me be the most effective version of myself that I can be. And that takes a lot of forms. It's protecting my time. It's keeping me focused. It's working really hard to not let me get segued into the weeds. There's a whole bunch of things that happen there, including stripping away all the things that I suck at, whether you take them on or you recognize someone else has to. Um,
You
that
just
left hand,
explained my unique action skill right there.
yeah, 100%, right? And that's the reason I can explain it so well is because you're so darn good at it, right? And
Aw,
the reason you're good at it is because we have really distilled down what your unique contribution is. And
yeah.
and then elevated it over time with new levels of being a performance coach and a team coach and a process coach inside of our businesses and for our clients. I know all those things. I know them all. I'm,
Very
likely
intelligent, knows
I'm
everything.
I'm a subject matter expert in all of those things, but I don't want to do them every day. I want to
Yeah.
see them done. And that's the difference, right?
Hmm.
And it's about I know it and then I want to make sure that we act on it. And so you put the right people in place. Um, let's pivot now and just quickly talk about the elephant in the room that we talked a little bit about, which is action instincts. And for people who are watching, they can see next to our names, we've got these 4-digit PIN numbers, right? Like these are not access to my credit card or my bank account, I promise you. They're actually way more profound than that because when you understand these 4 little digits about yourself, it can transform how you do everything and transform your communication, transform your relationships. And it's really important to understand these things and then take action with them in terms of how you redefine all of the activities that you're going to be doing in your life and in your business going forward.
And
So,
it's like you said,
Mallory,
it's not just your business, it's your entire life.
no, I mean, there's so much about my action instincts that have transformed my life, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with all my children, because I understand their action instincts, how we go about being more successful, having a family day or going on a vacation, or who's going to do what in home improvements. And every time we decide to ignore our action instincts in teamwork, it creates friction.
Yeah.
So, Mallory, what are these magic pin numbers on our screen and how do people use it?
So these magic numbers, for those of you who can't see and you're listening to the podcast, there's 4 of them.
You can see my t-shirt as well because I wear it like a badge of honor, right? It's
Yeah, I usually have it on my shirt. I don't today, but I'm always usually wearing them. They have become so ingrained in who I am. When I do this exercise with people and we learn what their 4 numbers are, um, it is eye-opening. It is freeing. The relationship that I've had with you over the years is easy because we know how each other works. And that's not to say that we don't butt heads or there isn't friction or we don't see things differently, but how we work together is seamless. People are like, oh, I have a struggle with so and so. It's like, I don't. Well, how? Because I understand these 4 numbers. The relationship with my mom has become amazing because I understand that our numbers are opposite. So what does that mean when we're interacting with each other? So what are those phone numbers and what does it mean for you? So these 4 numbers have been designed by Kathy Colby. She is an amazing woman who has developed the Colby system. And we, through Amplifier, have all of our clients, all of our employees take this assessment. And it gives you these 4 numbers, and these are your action instincts. So I could talk about this all day. I know you could too, Don. This is something that we both are subject matter experts on, and we both just have passion for this. But what it does is it helps you understand who you are as a person and how how the way that you've done things from a very young age to how you operate at work to how you operate at home is the same at its core. And so how do you embrace those to make your life easier, right? We use this with our clients to help hiring. You have developed an award-winning hiring process with these action instincts, with combined with these unique action skills to develop. How do you hire for the right role in your company, for the right count on? These 4 numbers are probably the most impactful things I've got in my entire life. I look at those 4 numbers and you can tell I need a lot of detail. I'm going to give you structure. I don't want to take a lot of risks unless they are calculated risks, we'll call them. And I can see the picture in my mind, but don't hand me the tools, because I'm still going to go back and I'm going to watch YouTube. I'm going to organize my tools and my materials. I'm going to make sure that I've got a first aid kit on hand, and then I can do it. I am capable of doing everything, but how I'm going to start to solve a problem is going to be these 4 numbers, whether it's doing plumbing, which I attacked last summer and aced after 4 days of back and forth to the hardware store, but I did it.
Doing lots of research and getting super organized, and then you took action, right?
I took action. Whereas you, Don, you have about 10 different weed whackers in your Quonset hut that you have great intention and great ability to fix. But let's be honest, you're just going to go buy a new one when it.
Yeah, my 7 in quick start. So the 4 numbers 7, 4, 7, 3. That second 7 is my propensity to take risks, to innovate, and even though I have a 7 in that, that first 7 is my propensity to do research, to be specific, to gather the information. I'm going to jump into then innovation and take some risks. And so my patience, because I'm the second number of the 4 is this, my instinct for creating or using structure is I am minimalistic in taking a simple structure and using it. I'm also great at looking at a process or a procedure and picking it apart and finding discrepancies and waste in there. But don't give me a blank sheet of paper and say, get organized. That would just totally wreck my brain, because I need a template. I need, give me a 1-page thing to use and I will be a happy camper who will be effective. Give me a blank piece of paper and that is just not.
It's going to end up in your procrastination list.
Equally, because of my 7 in quick start, my 3rd number, giving me a policy manual and saying, read all of this and you'll know what to do, is a train wreck. And by the way, a manual, a safety manual, a quality manual, a policy manual is not a tool to create action in your company. It is a rule book, and here's the test. Go and ask 10 of your people, when's the last time they read the manual? And about 70 to 80%, maybe 90% of your people will have never read it. 10% have skimmed it, and 0% are using it. And so, policies are rule books, and they are useful because they set the boundaries, but they don't create action. Procedures, which lots of people who are listening, particularly all of our industrial listeners who know us from Innovator, have these 5, 10, 15-page procedures. They are also super ineffective at getting stuff done because they are teaching tools, not action tools. But a process and how we take action is super useful. So
action sequence.
So, we've talked about unique action skills, which is, stop shooting on yourself and stop shooting on your team.
Yeah.
The action instinct is, to kind of boil this down, there are 3 parts to the mind. Everyone understands IQ and knowledge. Everyone understands some level of affect and personality and emotion. This ties in the 3rd part of the mind, which is the cognitive part of your mind. It is the most, I would say, primitive in human evolution. It is the most basic instincts. And just like we are we are creatures of this planet. And we evolved along with every other creature on this planet with instincts for how to survive. And instincts to survive involved us learning and having instincts for how we take action. And we recognize this in all of the animals around the whole world, that they have these innate instincts for how they behave, how they survive, how they thrive. But what Kathy Kolbe discovered with her almost 50 years of research and science in studying human behavior is that we too have instincts for how we take action, and we also have instincts for how we do not take action. And in that difference between how I take action and how Mallory take action and how my family take action, it explains everything that you need to understand about interpersonality conflicts, about stress, and about lack of productivity. And it is the complete opposite of what you were taught in school.
That's why we start with it during all of our experiences. We start with talking about your action instinct.
Absolutely. We need to understand how you're instinctively wired to take action and understand how that fits into the particular role we're looking to hire, because you can have all the knowledge in the world. Remember, we started this podcast by saying, learning without doing is not learning, and knowing without doing is not knowing at all. And one of the most powerful things that you can recognize is that you can study every textbook, you can study every policy manual that you have, you can read and memorize every single procedure and standard operating practice that your company has. But if it is contrary to your action instincts, it is useless, and you will not do or take action what those big, fancy, and expensive manuals and big procedural binders tell you to do.
Yeah.
And inside of that, if you learn as a leader and as an individual how you take action, these 4 numbers, you can really drive your productivity in terms of what your contribution can be in the effort of doing everything. Everything in our lives is, nothing happens until someone takes action. Nothing happens until someone takes action. By definition, doing is action. And it's all tied down to, what are my instincts? What are my instincts for taking action? And if you can combine a deeper understanding of your unique action skills and your action instincts, and redefine your role and contribution and that of your team, now you've got something magical, because you can transform a job description into something that's way more powerful for the person, for the team, for the leader, and for the company. And you can transfer someone into someone that you can count on to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Count on ability. And when you do that, now you are ready for the next part of action, which is the action formula and the action sequence, which, folks, you'll have to stay tuned, because we are out of time. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode, where we're going to take your team, who now has count on ability, and we're going to empower them with the action formula and the action sequence, so you can get past policy manuals and binders of standard operating procedures and get down to getting stuff done. Mallory, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and your expertise.
Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you for taking all of this stuff that I found and studied and loved and wanted someone to own, and embracing it, because while I know it all, you do it all, and that makes all the difference.
Thanks for letting me get to do all of this fun stuff. I love it.
All right, folks, tune in next time. We're going to talk about action in application. It's the second part of the amplified performance experience that Mallory can put you through. That is the action formula and the action sequence. And by the time you are done with those 4 elements of Amplify Performance, you can expect 200 to 500% better productivity and better results from you and from your team. Mallory, any final thoughts?
No, I think you covered it all, Don. I am really excited to be able to share all of this with everybody, and hopefully it resonates with you guys.
Wonderful. Tune in next time, folks, and we're going to talk about action in application. Bye for now.